I want to take you back in time, about 10 or 11 years. Everyone's got a BlackBerry, Shutter Island and Inception have just come out, David Tennant's just left Doctor Who, and I am heartbroken, and little Liv is about to have a serious life change. And no, I don't mean falling out of love with Doctor Who because David Tennant left, although that did happen. I am 11 or 12 years old, puberty, she's around the corner, but she hasn't quite arrived yet, you know? And I'm walking down the street in a knee-length dress, about 2 minutes away from my house, when a car going past honks its horn and a fully grown man leans out of the car window and catcalls me. She's discovered the male gaze and misogyny all in one day. She's not a fan. This is something that happens to every young woman at some point, and unfortunately for most of us, it is pubescent. For me, that was the start of a very slippery slope that started with me just wanting to avoid situations like that, and ending with me internalising that exact same misogyny until I was about 18. All of my early exposure to misogyny was based in appearance. I was a pretty masculine kid, grew up in a predominantly male household, stayed in that social setting for as long as I could because I was comfortable with it. The few times in my teen years I tried to feminise or be more in line with female beauty standards, I was at best mocked for it. Because of that, I not only shut off that side of my self-expression for literal years, but I held a great deal of contempt for anyone who did feel comfortable enough to express themselves in that way. In short, I became aggressively not like other girls. Now, I want to preface that there is nothing wrong with not wanting to focus on your appearance, with not fitting in with typical feminine standards of beauty, with not putting your appearance first. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I still don't exactly vibe with much of typical femininity today, but the entire reason that I actively hated and disregarded my own appearance as a teenager was because I immediately undervalued literally any woman that did. It didn't help that a lot of media I consumed in the 2010s was actively reinforcing that view. YouTube was still in its infancy, and quite frankly it was riddled with sexist, misogynistic, racist humour. Chick flicks like Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging, which I do still love, always had the bitchy, big-boobed, image-obsessed, mean girl style villain, and then the quirky, down-to-earth protagonist on the side. Everything around me at my most impressionable age was telling me, as a teenage girl, if you care about your appearance, you are inherently worth less. And it was a message that I internalised. This also led me, as a teenage girl with a larger chest, to actively try and restrict and hide my own body. Because especially in the early 2010s, having a large chest was always tied to being the image-obsessed mean girl. And they were things I really wanted to stay away from, because I'd internalised that message of it being worthless. Internalised misogyny often also pits women against each other, with each side of this false dichotomy of what women can do putting down the other. This again happened a lot when I was a teenager, and neither party was innocent. I would talk with my friends about how shallow and vapid it was to care for your appearance, and how if you did, that was clearly as much as you had to offer. And I had gone so far distancing myself from women at that age that I was frequently misgendered, both accidentally and deliberately as a means to hurt me. It took me moving away to university and really being in a much healthier social setting to start to deconstruct the internalised misogyny I had. I didn't do it consciously. I only realised a couple of years later that I even had it in the first place. And don't get me wrong, some of it's definitely still there, and it's something I'm actively trying to fight against. I think a really active step in trying to fight your own internalised misogyny is finding female role models that you can really look up to. My most recent one, and this is not going to be a shock, has been Florence Given. And again, not much of a shock. She's got a brilliant book out that I'll probably put over here that has an entire chapter on internalised misogyny. And that's both helped me really reflect upon the actions of my youth and identify the microaggressions that I still carry out to this day, and really try and stomp them out of my psyche. But secondly, and I think most importantly, it is vital to discuss internalised misogyny with other women in your social pool. It was actually a conversation I had with friends over FaceTime that made me want to do this video in the first place. But also to know that it's not uncommon to have internalised misogyny, at least at some level, and to know that it's never too late to try and fight it.